Welcome to the first ever design leadership meetup that we're hosting here at Product Board. Today, the topic is feedback, the art of giving it, but also receiving it. I want to welcome everybody who decided to show up here in the office. It's awesome to see you here despite the beautiful weather outside. I imagine myself being outside. But also welcome everybody who decided to join the stream. We're streaming this, so hopefully you can hear us, you can see us, and everything's working well. My name is Deněk. I'm one of the design leaders at Product Board, and maybe I'll kick us off with a simple question to all of you. Can you raise a hand if you're a designer or a design leader and you often receive or give feedback? Okay, seems like we have a good crowd. This next hour should be pretty interactive. We have a Slido over there. I see that somebody's already raising questions. We're making jokes. I haven't had it. Oh, it's a question, okay. I haven't had a time to look at it just yet. But if you will have some questions over the course of this discussion, feel free to add it there. We might interject with one of your questions. We might take them towards the end. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So I guess now on to the panelists. It is my pleasure to welcome MJ from Kiwi.
Thank you.
We also have Malvina, our own design manager from Product Board.
Hello.
And we have Honza, design director from Supernova.
Hey, everyone.
I thought I would let them introduce themselves by answering three, I hope, simple questions. So the first one is, what's your role? The second one is, what does the design team look like, as far as size of the team and roles that are on the team? And the third one is, what are your feedback rituals? So maybe, MJ, can we start from you?
Sure. So my role is, as Deněk already mentioned, a design manager. I think I want to just point out that since we are at Product Board, it's a little different role to the design manager at Product Board. At Kiwi, a design manager manages design leads. So it's a managing of managers. And then the design leads have the teams. I think at Product Board, it's managing the individual contributors.
Precisely.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of a difference there. So the team, currently, the UX team is roughly 50 people. We have 5 locations around Europe. I'm counting also UX researchers, UX writers, or as we call them, content designers, design system team, and so on. So product designers is roughly around 20 to 25 people. And regarding the rituals, we have many rituals as it's a rather scaled team, but when it comes to critiques and feedback, I would just point out from our design workflow, I think 3 main ones. One is design jamming, which is more very informal. We have some rough guidelines for it, but it's essentially motivating people to jam together on different designs, to work either remote through Figma or in person by whiteboarding and so on. So it's design jamming. There is not much, it's not a rigid process there, it's rather free. Then we have design critiques. That's mostly focused on design-specific critique, so talking interactions, the UX flows, and so on. The audience is usually UX people and stakeholders. Sometimes it can be also PMs, but it's mostly focused on the UX internal feedback. And then we have something called design reviews, which is more high level, a little more prepared, already a story behind the design, and this is meant for stakeholders also outside of UX, so PM engineering, but also QA, or even business stakeholders join. So I think this is roughly how I would, some of the feedback rituals, how I would describe them.
Awesome, thank you. So it's jams, critiques, and reviews. That sounds like a good mix.
Yeah, exactly.
Malvina, 3 simple questions for you.
Very simple. So I'm also design manager, and as we already covered a little bit, how it works at Product Board is that there is around 20 people on design team. There are product designers. We have 1 UX writer and 1 design system designer, I think. Yeah, we have a few new joiners. I need to count it in my head. But we are all embedded in our multidisciplinary teams, and then we have 2 main pillars, and my role is to oversee a 1 pillar. So I manage IC, so individual contributors inside a pillar. Our rituals. Okay, so we have design crits, quite, I think, standard inside a pillar, which I think is quite important because that means there's in the smaller groups, the context is easy, so it's very easy for them to build this relationship and this safe space. Those are twice a week. We also have something that we call Design Symposium, which we just started at the beginning of this year. And because right now there is not that much overlap between the pillars, we want to make sure that designers know what's going on inside the whole team and also inside brand team that is based in San Francisco. We are also a remote first company, so those touch points between the teams are very important. And we also have pair design, which I think in many ways is kind of part of feedback culture. There's not structure, they are not regular, but the teams or the designers inside the team or outside pillar, they are always encouraged to work with each other, jump together, give each other feedback. So yeah, I think we try to attack feedback from different perspectives.
I'll interject with 1 small note. We also have this dedicated Slack channel for
Exactly, our
asynchronous
asyncs.
scripts.
That's very true. So basically, we have a channel that the only purpose of it is for everyone to just post what we are doing, so you can give a feedback to everyone despite what team you're in. And also, I think that's a nice visibility opportunity because if you're a PM, you can also go and see what the design team is up to and you can give feedback. Again, we need to be remote first, so that works very well.
Thanks, Malvina. So Hanzo, your role, the team, and your rituals.
Okay, so I'm leading our design team. We are a fairly small design team. We are 5 people. The whole company is 35, I think. So I think we have a pretty good ratio of design versus the rest, especially design versus engineers. We have 2 product designers. We have 1 UX writer. We have 1 brand/UI designer who is helping with design system. And then I am doing kind of whatever is needed. Rituals, right?
Rituals, yes.
So we have a weekly sync on Monday when we just meet for 30-45 minutes and just sync whatever is coming this week. If there is maybe some opportunity for pair designing, or maybe for someone needs some help, or maybe someone is blocked by something. So we discuss it there. We also have one of our product managers there because he knows our priorities, so he knows what may be blocking by design. So he essentially gives us this information there. Then we have design critiques. We have 2 of them each week. We have Tuesday and Thursday. It's an hour-long session. Sometimes it gets longer, sometimes it's shorter. But it's usually when we just meet and just chat about whatever we are working on, even in very early stages of design. And then what? Then we have lots of ad hoc things, but I would mention maybe 1 planned, which is every other week, is a UX breakdown, which is a meeting which we have with our engineering team, and we actually discuss our features we are preparing and that are ready for development. Not final, ready for development, at least we think. And we just go through the prototype, happy path there. We get questions from engineers, and we just iterate on that. But I believe that is a very critical meeting for our collaboration with the rest of the company. I did not mention that we are completely remote. We have some people in Prague. I'm in Prague. 1 other product designer is in Prague. We have another product designer in Amsterdam. Another is traveling through Asia or in Prague, depends on the time of the year. And our writer is also in Amsterdam. So our writer and designer are meeting sometimes in the co-working space to work together. The rest is meeting here. We also meet twice, 3 times per year, all together.
Thank you for the intros. So now that you all know who's sitting here, I'll just remind you, feel free to ask some questions here on the Slido. I was going to start with a pretty general question, but I think we'll just dive right into it. So the first one, I don't know who wants to answer. It's up to you, but how can anyone be a good critiquer, right? The person that actually provides feedback. Does the team or the company have any principles or rules that people that give feedback have to follow? Or maybe as a leader, do you enforce any principles or rules that people that give feedback have to follow?
I can start. So
Mm-hmm.
I think for designers, it's easier than for the other roles in a company. I heard an argument that it's because we go through art schools and we do those crits, so we kind of learn the rules early on, but I don't think that's the reason. I think it's because we are so close to our customers and we have to show our work to strangers so much. It's kind of easy for us to show it then to our teams. So I think it just comes with the job, and the longer you're doing it, the more you learn. But that doesn't mean the rules that you can apply as a company and you as a team design leader. I think they're very important because everyone is on a different journey in their design role, and it's good to know what is working and what is not, what's the culture, and just, get some help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there is not a particular. I'm trying to think about our internal guidelines that we have some high-level statements. I don't remember them from top of my head, but it is something which should. It's not like it would tell people how they should critique work. It's more like encouraging that there is no wrong way to do it. So it's like you can do it as early as possible, be open, be transparent, honest with it, and so on. But this is more just to encourage the talk. And then it's just up to the people to critique. So we do have some guidelines, but it's mostly about encouraging the critique rather than telling them how to do it.
So what if I see somebody's work and I say, I don't like it, I don't like you? Like that obviously doesn't sound right.
That's fine.
That's okay. We're talking about how to give critique. That's also up. Then the person who has the design critiqued is up also to them to decide what to take from the feedback and what not. But this is more like an opinion, and I think as you said that we designers are maybe a little better than other roles in it. It's with the experience. So I think in design team this doesn't happen that often. It's mostly I always say that you have to ask why. So go deeper into when you explain something, when you think about when you are critiquing work, think about usually the first impulse is emotional. So when you see something and you're like, I don't like it, there is like an emotion, but then you have to dig deeper into like why you don't like it. So that's where the why question comes in. So I always try to ask myself why? And then hopefully build a good enough argument. That's what the constructive criticism is about. So it needs to be based on something. It's not just a statement, I don't like it. It's more, I don't like this because this and this. Maybe historically we already tried this experiment and it failed and it was quite similar to what we are doing right now. Or maybe if from previous job I have this, we did this and so on. So there has to always be some kind of base of like why are you saying this emotional thing you're saying. So yeah, the first impulse will be always, I don't like it, but then you need to dig deeper. I think that's a good way how to control yourself to not do immediate emotional opinion.
Mm-hmm. Hanzo, any point to this, any reaction?
I'm actually surprised that we are like, you both actually said it, we are like as designers, we are more used to giving credit. I think it's not entirely true because there is a big culture of code reviews in engineering teams, and they are giving essentially feedback on their code through GitHub. Maybe we just talk about it more, so maybe we practice more the good practices and stuff, which can lead to some different culture. I would say maybe one thing only. Do not assume. I think the good critique person who is giving feedback and everything should not assume anything. If they are not sure, there is a lot of untold things. Even if you get a lot of explanation about what the design should do, what is the goal, what was tried before and stuff. If you put your bias and your assumption into your crit, it might be also like negative thing. So if you are not sure, just ask. I think that's a big thing for people who are giving credit, is actually maybe even ask more rather than actually telling them how it should be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you're, maybe for you, MJ, when you're onboarding new designers, or any of your managers are onboarding new designers to the design team at Kiwi, what do you tell them about the crits? How they should act, how they should behave? Maybe what's expected.
Yeah, I think this is it comes with the culture a little bit. It comes with how people feel in the team, and obviously changing culture or establishing culture is super hard. It's like a long-term process. So what we try to do with newcomers is you tend to react to the feedback differently from people who you already know better, and as a newcomer, you don't know the people you're going to be in the critiques with. So what we try to do is we tried in the past having these cards, like where everyone has their strengths and weaknesses and so on. We don't update it that much nowadays, but what we try to do, we actually try to show it through the work. What are people good at? So actually encouraging people to share their work. We have this kind of internal conference, we call it the bi-weekly show. We do it every second Friday in the afternoon at the end of the week, where people are encouraged to do case studies on projects they did, or usually people share stuff which they are passionate about. Some people are focused more on prototyping, some people are focused more on user research and so on. So they share like new knowledge they learned or some case study they did at work. And through the constant sharing of the work, people learn about how their peers, what they are good at, what they are mostly good at. Then when they are in the critiques with them, they know what to expect. They know that if they get feedback on mobile interaction from this person who did a presentation on how they do it in their workflow and so on, they are more tentative to understand and be more open to get it. So I think it comes really with understanding the culture, and for newcomers it's always hard. It will never be immediately. As a manager, you need to make sure that you give as much information as possible about the other peers to the newcomer, to even promote those people a little bit in the eyes of the newcomer, like, hey, this person did this in the past, it's really good at this, you can expect these kind of things from them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is how it is for me. I think it's about the culture, which comes with like knowing each other's skill sets.
We keep talking about culture. It's sort of this esoteric thing, right? How do you create the right culture, or maybe how do you change the culture in a team so that the feedback giving is not too negative or maybe judgmental? Yeah, how is a culture like that created? If you have a story, maybe that can be helpful.
This is a tough one. I already gave my answer to trying to present more of your work in the eyes of the other, but maybe you have different opinions on that.
So I don't have a story from Product Board, because I think when I joined, Product Board had already very good culture about giving credit, and I think we improved it and we learned a lot, but still it was at a good stage. But in the past I worked in a very small startups when we would have like a team of 5 and there wasn't really that much of a mature design culture around. And I think in those situations our role as a design leaders is much more important, because maybe it's obvious, but we lead by example. So we really need to show that there's, showing your work often and showing it around is very important. But also that's the moment when those rules, and I think that's what you mentioned, Daniel, that do we need to have some process? I think in that moment it is very important. So for example, in the past I would have a template for the team that they need to fill in before create, when basically that's very clear that I'm coming with this problem, I'm asking for feedback about only this, I am not asking feedback about that. So the team knew what they've been asked for and what feedback to give. But then you as a facilitator during those creates, and we had a very strict roles at the beginning. I think in the end we didn't, but in the beginning you had a note taker, you had a facilitator, and you had people giving critique. You needed to be very hands-on with asking this why question, or why you don't like it, or maybe when the discussion started and be around, oh, I don't want red button because I don't like red, you kind of were like, okay, but let's move on. We were supposed to talk about X, what about X? So I think in the beginning, being more strict is actually helpful, so you can be more creative and give more freedom later on.
You just reminded me that this is exactly how we do it when we compare design critiques and design reviews. In design critiques, we are mostly people who do critique quite often, and internally UX people. So there we did all of this, had note takers, did agenda before that with asking the question, what is going to be discussed? But we found out throughout, as the maturity of the team evolved, that it's not needed for these meetings that much, but it's still needed for the design reviews where we have the stakeholders from other teams. So we still keep those there.
Honzo, any thoughts on culture? You joined the new team relatively recently, so how did you influence it? How did you create the culture that you wanted to see?
Well, I always start with observing, looking what's happening and what works, what doesn't work as I would like to, or maybe that doesn't create behavior that I would like to see in the team. When I joined Supernova, we had a lot of role specific silos. Engineers were talking to engineers, designers were talking to designers, and there was a person who was kind of communicator between those, kind of doing the handoff part through tickets and through issues. And one of the things that were definitely there was that people don't know who to talk to, not just in design, but also in design they kind of talked, but not in any structured way. I have to say I took a lot of inspiration from Product Board, because I love how Product Board does design crits and how it works for design team. So that was a huge inspiration for me. So I knew I want to have design crits which are regular with the team, which are booked in the calendar. Everyone has them there, so when they are looking what's ahead of them in the day, they know the crit is there. I have some OCD about organizing stuff, let's say. So I, of course, created a board in Notion, all the guidelines, all the tips, how people should give crit. I guess no one cared.
So that's not how you create your culture?
Well,
through Notion page?
I guess no, yeah. We here at Product Board, we had the team was larger. We were booking slots for crit to be sure that actually there will be people who will be giving crit, or we will canceling it. I took this to the small team and I said, hey, we have this board now. If you want to present the topic, just put it there. It was a huge blocker for everyone. What I learned fairly quickly was that actually people want to meet, they want to talk about design. They like this part, but they don't like the organization part. So back to the observe, just look who is in the team, how they like to work, how they want to communicate, what they do already. Because things are happening. They may happen in DMs, they may happen somewhere, or on one-on-one Zooms. For me, what was important to actually bring it to the larger team, so more people have context. But how do I build culture? I have no idea, honestly. I'm just trying to do the best.
and then maybe others just follow you.
Or not, because they did not read my Notion, so yeah.
Yeah, we all like to create Notion pages. All right, I promised that we would take some questions from the audience, and there are 22, I believe. This one on the top seems very relevant. Not sure who wants to answer, but the question goes, how do you educate other functions, PMs, tech leads, etc., on how to give actually valuable feedback to designers, right? So dealing with stakeholders who are not designers. How do you educate them? What do you tell them?
You just invite them to create and let them observe and learn. Obviously, it depends what is your situation in the company. But I think that's the best approach. And I think something else that is probably going to disappoint you, but in Product Board, we really believe in the power of trios. So PM, design, and engineering manager working together. And they should be best friends. And you, as a designer, you act as a glue between those two functions. At least that's how I see it a lot. And it's basically on us to make sure that we show our work to them. We have relationship with them that is good enough that we can have those honest conversations about, okay, I'm asking about this and your feedback wasn't helpful. And that's how I think it improves over time.
So if I paraphrase this, essentially, you're saying that they should observe how designers give feedback to other designers and ideally replicate it.
I think they should be involved. They definitely should be invited to those crits. They should be able to feel that they are allowed to give feedback, but also that they belong, so they can follow the rules that we have already in the team.
I completely agree with that. I would not even try to educate them, because the reason why they are there is to tell opinion which we as designers maybe don't see. So I would not like them to copy what we do. So inviting them, I do agree with that.
I also think there is a time and place for feedback from other roles, because as designers, we care about different things than people like for PMs or engineers, specifically engineers, I would say. And sometimes it may be too soon to just invite them into something, because my experience is that engineers are very often in the solution mode, especially when it comes to getting something from design and just implementing it. Of course, they give feedback and everything, but they do their discovery. But that's for them. That's a different stage. And for us, they don't obsess over details, over pixels, as we sometimes do. I think it's important to find the balance when to invite them into something. They also need to understand better what is actually the direction to give a good type of feedback, because sometimes we just don't know what the solution will be. And I think it's important from us as designers to tell them, hey, this is something we are exploring, and it may be not like this, but we are kind of stuck. And your feedback, your input, your experience with the platform, even with the code base, with the limitations, or maybe with anything else that they can have. And I think there was a great point from Martin about this diversity, because we maybe don't want them to think as designers, because we all think as designers. Where would be the value in that? So just for me, I think it's important to find the balance when to present things to them and set up the expectations.
I would also add to that a good, because this is a question about educating people how to give better feedback. I think better feedback doesn't really necessarily come with better experience on the spot, but with better preparation. So it also really depends on how well we actually structured the critique for those other roles beforehand. So we know how engineers what they will probably focus on with no PMs. So we can actually structure the questions before the critique in a way that it will sort of tailor to what we need to know from them. So I think it also comes down to being prepared, not only educating them to give more thorough feedback.
This actually... Okay, Malvina, please.
Sorry, just the one thing. I fully agree. This is our responsibility, but it's so important that for us as a storytellers, as a designers, to adjust the way we communicate to the audience. That's when the education is not needed, because we speak their language and they feel more included and we get more diverse feedback.
I will say one more thing, sorry. It might be bridge for you though. I think it's also about not just educating people who are giving the feedback, but also talking as a design team about how we receive that feedback. Because it's all about both sides, and especially if we know some people, we know that someone is grumpy in the morning, I am grumpy in the morning, we have some crits in the morning. It should not be an excuse. It is the reality though. So you know what to expect from people, you know when to talk to them, you know you can read if they are busy this day or another day, or if the Mondays are not a good day for them. So just like find their habits first, and that's the adjusting the story and adjusting how you talk to them and when you talk to them, but also don't take it personally. I think that's the big thing, and I think we will get to this part when we will be talking about receiving feedback. Just don't take it personally. It's just about the pixels on the screen. It's not about you being a bad designer, hopefully.
Yeah, this is the perfect bridge that I needed.
Yeah, I thought so.
So I'm a designer. How should I actually ask for feedback, right? Do I just put work in front of other people and tell them, give me feedback? What should I include? How should I phrase my ask to others that are participating in the feedback session? What do you do, maybe?
I can start, since you were starting always, so it's unfair to put this on you. I think it's about expectations, to set like what kind of feedback you are looking for. Like if you give someone an image, they will comment the image. So, and that's what you are putting, like sending them essentially. If you send them like even a prototype in Figma, they will form a lot of assumption about lots of different things, maybe even things that you kind of don't care because that's not the point of your design. You just tried something, or maybe it's not one-on-one in Figma with what's in production, and people may get attached to those things. So just like frame it in a way to kind of like nudge them into the direction and give them some context that you need, what you want to hear, what you need to know from them. Maybe even when you are blocked.
I have a funny story about this. It's not connected solely to feedback, but it was at the time when in Kiwi we didn't run that many critiques with engineers. It was, let's say, a couple of years ago. And I remember that I exactly created, back when I was still designing hands-on, I created a prototype where I put, the prototype was built in a way that I needed to do like like when you make a prototype and you need to like have a backend decision, let's say, so you don't design the flow, you just do like a decision tree, like click here for this prototype, click here for this prototype. And we didn't really, back then, like discuss detailed feedback with the engineers. So it happened that how you were talking about the assumptions and perceptions, they actually implemented it into the product. So the product literally had like you are in the UI and suddenly there is a white screen where you have to make a decision with big red letters, like completely off. But this happens. So it's, people have their own assumptions when they see something. And sometimes critiques are really good to also avoid this.
Any more thoughts from you, Malvina? How do I ask for feedback?
I'm gonna answer with it depends on the audience. I know. So what I'm trying to achieve with our pillars critics. It's because it's such a small group, and that was the whole goal. We used to have a cross-pillar crits when there was 10 people. Right now it's around 4, 5 every time. And I really hope that for those crits, people can come without any prep. So it's actually like 5 minutes before I have this idea, I'm just gonna draw it on a piece of paper and I can just share it with the team and I'm gonna get a valuable feedback. So I really hope this is achievable and it's possible. But as I mentioned before, with engineers, other roles, and if you ask for feedback even outside the EPD, so for like people who don't know that much, who design even, like what designers even do, that requires much, much more structure and be very specific. This is what I'm asking for. This is what I don't want to hear about. And yeah, I think just the prep is very important there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with the prep work, I think it goes maybe even without saying, but it also depends on the fidelity, right? You reminded me when you were talking about like the napkin sketch, like when you come to a critique with a napkin sketch, probably nobody will start discussing the colors, right, in the critique. So it also depends on the fidelity you come with. It gives sort of an expectation to what kind of feedback are you looking for, but also then you have the specific questions, which are then you can be more specific with what you expect.
I have one thing for this, because what happens often is that we now design in high fidelity since the first day, because we have this library in Figma UIK design system, and we can just like take the building blocks and just design it, and then you go to Grit, you show them this high fidelity design, which looks great because you are using your design system, right? You spend lots of time on building that, but you don't want high fidelity feedback. But the message is kind of mixed, so I think it's important, even on like designer only crits, to state what kind of feedback you want. The expectations, do you want to fidelity? Is it about flow? Is it about UI details? Is it about animations? Because you will at least give some boundaries to people, what they should think about and what not. I got maybe one more thing into who is the person who you want feedback from. If it's a designer, there is a big chance, if you have some design culture of feedbacks already, that you don't need to give them that much information because you kind of work together every day. That applies also with your product team, right? Because you work with those people every day. So they kind of know how you work. They know what kind of things and what stage you are sharing with them. When you are asking feedback from someone who is not used to how you work and how you work as a team, I think it's always a bad idea to just send it. Like you mentioned that you can write context and problems. Those are my Notion documents that no one reads actually. There is a big chance that no one will read it. They just click the link they just got and they just start commenting it. So just have a meeting, a call with them, or record a Loom video or something which is different than reading. Don't expect them to read whatever you write, because there are two things, of course. One is to read it, and second is to understand it the way you wanted them to understand it. Especially because no one here, or most of us here, are not native English speakers. So there may be lots of things lost in translation.
Let's talk about emotional response, right? A lot of the times designers put a lot of effort into their work. So how do you support the people that you work with in dealing with this emotional response when somebody gives them feedback that, maybe their work is not good enough? And possibly how do you deal with it yourself? Have you developed any strategies?
I cry. In the evening when no one sees that.
Okay, Honza cries. And then he tweets.
Obviously.
Okay, I will just put out the general statement to start with. I will avoid the buzzword, but I think it's, as a designer, when you are going into a critique, you what we always talk more with junior designers about is that it's about the quality of the. So a critique can only make the work better. It doesn't say that your work is bad. It's just this way the quality can go higher. So it's like looking at it from the glass half full thing, that this is about removing a personal bias from the work. When giving like different people, when getting together different people with different background, different history, different experiences, there will be probably things, they will look at it from different angle. So they will just spot maybe things which you haven't seen, but it's not necessarily that the work would not be good. Like you did your best with which you can do with your personal bias. Mm-hmm. So like not looking at it that if you get critique, it doesn't mean that you didn't do a good enough job.
I have a story. I used to work with a PM, and we were preparing for this relatively big presentation. And I asked her if she was nervous about presenting the work. And she essentially told me, no, why should I be? The work is work, and I am who I am. So if I get feedback on the work, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. I'll just go and improve it. Those were some wise words from her, and this is years ago, and I still remember it. So you're not the work.
Yeah, this sums up basically my statement. It's a good story, yeah.
What about disagreements? Sometimes there are disagreements on the crit, right? Different perspectives. Okay. Honza has a reaction to the previous one.
I'm breaking his flow all the time. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good.
I think what's important is to not deal with emotions immediately and on the crit itself. Just like observe, as a leader, observe what's happening. If there was even a situation that needs some commenting, or maybe if there is a pattern that may be happening, maybe there may be some different or hard relationship between 2 or 3 different people. I think that's why we have one-on-ones. So talk with people on one-on-ones about those things, address them, open them again in a few days and say, hey, there was this situation that happened on the crit. How do you feel about it? Talk about it. Be factual. Don't say, hey, like you behaved like an idiot there. What the fuck you are doing? Can I do this? Sorry. Just like describe the situation as it was without any personal bias in that, without any judgment into the person, and ask them how they feel about it, if it even needs addressing, because sometimes we may think it needs addressing, but maybe they already process it, or maybe they don't care. Maybe it's just work, as you said, for them. So it's okay. Maybe they just got too passionate on the crit, and it wasn't about anything.
You just reminded me of 2 more points. Sorry, Zdeněk. One of the things is that you were probably talking more about the in-person disagreement. There is also disagreement in written form, let's say, or asynchronous. That one I can tell from my personal experience. I'm a very emotional person, very enthusiastic and energetic, so I react either very positively or very negatively. What actually helped me throughout the years is when I see comments which like trigger me, I actually sleep on it. I guarantee you it's so good, because if I would sometimes write like immediately what is my first thought, it's never a good idea if you are like having emotions there. But really when I wait a couple of, let's say, hours or even like a day, I sleep on it, then I can really like describe very diplomatically and objectively the situation, and that really helps. Right. So that's one of the things. And the other thing you reminded me of is that I've observed it throughout the years in our team that when we started, back when Honza was also on the team, we were very Brno-centric. It was mostly Brno. Then we started spreading out around Europe, and then we found out that people are different in different parts of the world, and they explain stuff differently. So we had, for example, a lot of people from Amsterdam, from the Netherlands. People from the Netherlands are very direct, which for us is really like, we get scared, like these people don't like us, but that's not true. They just like are at work and they just say what they think very directly. So it's also about really managing the culture. I think there is this book, Culture Code. I forgot now the Erin Meyer or the name of the author. Hans,
It's yellow.
It's yellow. Yeah, it's a yellow book. That's a really good book which explains this phenomenon, like how different cultures sort of express themselves differently. So I think this is another point. If you work for remote teams or teams which are distributed, you have to have an expectation that people from different cultures and different parts of the world will probably interact differently and not get scared of it and just be try to be open to those other people.
And one last thing from me, sorry.
I don't think it's
I- What can I do?
No, I like it.
Thank you for bringing async creating communication, because I think it's a big part. I was now mostly thinking about the either like Zoom call or maybe like in a meeting room or something. We had this, I think, emoji or meme kind of running here, product board. It should be a Zoom meeting. We usually use it too often, not often, too late, in a thread that has like 60, 70 replies there. And it's like, this should be a Zoom meeting. And sometimes it's just better to have a call on that rather than replying in emotions or not. Maybe just, hey, like, can we just 15 minutes, 20 minutes sync on it? Because there may be, again, lots of assumption, not using wrong emojis, using wrong words, things like this. So
I think Product Board has very good emoji culture. Like we have a lot of passive-aggressive ones. Like we would probably use the popcorn emoji on a thread we just collated.
It's all over the place. At this point, I think there are too many emojis, and we're lucky that there is lazy loading of those emojis. It's insane. Malvina, you have something to say too.
I have so much to say, but I'm gonna try to be quick. So something about sleeping on your emotions. I think it's very important, and that's what I started doing quite recently. Whenever I feel that something really, really affected me, I always ask myself why, because there's always a reason why you feel this emotion. And sometimes it can be, because I was so attached to this design and that's my ego, but I think that's not usually the case. There is something else. So if you're just gonna spend a few minutes just thinking about it, then you can realize that, there is this bigger thing that we need to understand and that I should address instead of reacting to this first emotion that you have. And the second one, talking about cultural differences, our team is between Prague and the UK. And if you say that like people from Amsterdam are more direct, the panic that UK people are like getting into because of Czech people, it's beyond. And I think for me it's very helpful because I'm Polish, so I hope I'm kind of more on your side, but I also live in the UK for more than 10 years. I kind of understand both words, and the amount of, I think, time we need to spend into understanding that something that sounds absolutely innocent and just this is good constructive feedback, on the other side just can sound like the most personal offense. And finding this balance in a remote world, oh God, yeah, it's fun, so much fun.
All right, thank you, everyone. Moving on to disagreements and maybe consensus seeking, and then we can take some of the questions from the audience. So how do you handle disagreements on critiques? And then, does there always have to be consensus at the end of a crit?
I would say no. Just one thing I always repeat to designers is that, especially when they're presenting their own work, they're owning the design. They are the decision makers in the end on the design part of the product. They will be accountable if something with the design is wrong. Then people, so for example, we have discussions with, let's say, higher business stakeholders who have their opinions on the design in some of the design reviews. They share feedback, and now designers come to me and they're like, okay, so I don't fully agree with this because of these and these constraints, but the high-level stakeholder said it, so should I do it? So I say like, okay, well, it's an opinion of your opinion against an opinion of another employee. we will never know until our users get it in their hands. So you do whatever you feel is the best way, and we can either prove it to the stakeholder through the data from the users that it was the right way, or we will then iterate on it further. But eventually, if you would do the decision based on someone else's recommend or opinion, and then it doesn't work in the experiment, then people will come to you like, "Hey, designer, you did this design. It's your work." So I think there doesn't have to be consensus. I always say to the designers to take all the feedback, analyze it afterwards, and pick what you think is relevant to what you need to achieve. And then we'll never know until it gets out there and we get some real feedback from the audience, from the people who are using the product, whether it works or not. I do observe as the company gets bigger, people tend to have more opinions, and there's more people with more opinions, so it gets trickier. So that's why I'm trying to reiterate this, like we need to move fast, because otherwise we will spend 6 months going back and forth with 3 different scopes of this feature, and we will never know until we get it out. So my answer in short is no, there doesn't have to be consensus, in my opinion.
I fully agree. I think there is some level of complexity on top of that. There is feedback, but there is also instructions. I think that's something that we as a design leads, we need to deal with, because in the end of the day, the design quality is a responsibility. And I think, yeah, feedback is opinions, and that's how it should be. I treat my designers as they're experts in their domain, and it should be in power of deciding. And as you said, users are gonna judge, but there are some things that just sometimes can't happen, like being against design systems or just not following the rules that we already have. So I think during crits, I'm always very clear that this is my opinion, this is feedback, and this is instruction, so they know exactly what's happening.
I would actually say that I think it's good to have disagreements on crit. There should be disagreements, and if you are having a series of crits and feedback sessions without disagreement, maybe there is a different question you should ask. Why? Why is that? Why are we not challenging our work? Why are we not pushing our work forward? Are we really that good designers that everything is perfect and everyone sees that now, finally? So maybe that's one point. And second, we were using kind of like, not interchangeably, but we were using both words here, review and critique. And I think it's important to make a distinction here. Martin said that the design, and you were kind of agreeing with Martin, the designer is owner of the design. The designer who is presenting is the owner of the design. I think this is really important. That is on the crit, because there is no stakeholder at the moment. Like, there can be some power imbalance because of your title, or maybe your CEO is coming to the crit, and you need to work as a leader with this imbalance to kind of break it there, so it feels safe to challenge people there. Because coming back to, like, if you don't have disagreements, maybe people don't feel safe to disagree with other people. Maybe they are afraid to hurt them. Maybe they don't know that it will not be personal, or it will not be taken personally. And I think this is all that you can somehow change, or maybe like improve within your design culture, using this esoteric word, as you nicely called it. So yeah, just like, I think there should be a disagreement, but also do not mix crit and review. Crit is about feedback, challenging the solutions. Review, there are stakeholders, there is a different dynamic in there. So just that.
We have some good questions in Slido. We'll go through some of them. I don't think we'll have time to go through all of the 29. But how do you feel when a non-designer is messing around with your design on their own? So you see that magical avatar in Figma, and they're just running around your file. How do you feel?
The crying part was covered already. You can also duplicate the file and do not share it with them. Or just say hi to those people and just say hi and jam with them there. That's what I do usually. Looking at, I'm curious what they want to do there, what they are trying, and maybe they have better idea than I have, possibly. And Figma has those awesome moving cursors with chats. If it's in FigJam even, because it's some flow for workshop or something, you can do like, how do we call it? High five with them. So that's fun, people love it. Just like wave at them, say hi, and jam together.
I think it's still, I'm pretty okay when the designers do this. I'm more scared when the PMs start doing this. Then I'm like, okay, maybe we have to intervene here. But some of them do for some specific reasons. When they do retrospectives in Figma or something, they tend to use that. But yeah, with designers, I'm still okay. I get scared when the product managers start moving the components. It's no, but it doesn't happen that much or at all.
You can always take their editor rights away, right? So
yeah, that's the short-term solution I always tend to do.
Malvina, how do you feel?
Honestly, I'm happy when people are doing this because I never believe that my idea is the one. Like, if someone has better, please do the work for me. Like, is there a better situation than that? But yeah, I agree. I think PMs and also when engineers try to build something, I think that's the moment when you're like, what is the problem here? What do you want to achieve? I can help you. I believe in collaboration, but I think there are like workshops for that. Whenever the design is ready, let's talk.
Like I always, then when the engineers start doing this, I'm asking them like, okay, maybe we should go into GitLab and start doing the code on our own and trying. I don't know how they would feel about this when designers messing with the code. No, but this doesn't happen. It's very rare, and we mostly take it as a joke.
What's the weirdest or worst format or way to critique you've encountered? An example, maybe? The worst or weirdest critique that you've encountered? Any horror stories? Do I have any horror stories? Oof. I remember when the team was a lot smaller, we were working closer together with the CEO, Hubert, and he was next to me, but I have to step out to the restroom. So I returned a couple minutes later, and then he was sitting at my seat, working on technically his laptop, but they were my designs. He didn't say much. He was just, he just said that he has ideas how to improve it. So, from all the respect that I have for him, I just said okay. But it wasn't really a critique.
I think we have similar ones from the beginnings. I think we had one project, Onza remembers it probably, when we had one designer, the CEO, and a bunch of super expensive, the best top-notch engineers working together in a silo, which ended up in the most expensive prototype in the history of the company, because technically you have a designer who designs stuff, then the CEO gives feedback, which is like, okay, good, let's ship it. And then we have a bunch of really great engineers who can make anything happen, do crazy stuff. So we ended up with a really nice prototype, which nobody knew how to use in the end. So yeah, that's our horror story from the beginnings, I would say. Yeah, I think similar to.
Yeah, I actually have a similar one because we are, I said, 30 people. When I joined, we didn't have regular crits, but both CEO and CPO were very involved in feature ideation, feedback, and things like this. And we started design crits I was used to this like open, safe place from product board. I was like, yes, great, we will have that. Let's invite also CEO, let's invite also CPO. And I immediately learned that there is too big power imbalance. Not intentionally, but people just don't want to challenge, or maybe are not used to challenge some people on certain positions, especially if it's a founder, for example. So I guess that's a similar situation with Hubert and you. So our solution actually wasn't the best, or I think it actually was the best. We agreed that this is a designer time, and those two people should not be there. We will happily invite them into feedback sessions, but not this regular one where we very often discuss things which are like weeks from delivery and are very, very raw. So it helped to actually kind of shield the design team from those like C-level positions in there, even though we are a small company and everyone still talks to each other.
Thank you. So maybe we'll take one or two more questions. For you, Malvina, what structure of like a design crit do you find is the most effective? Talking about time, number of people, their role, overall structure of the session. What's the ideal critique?
Great question, because I have a case study from Product Board to talk about. So when I joined Product Board, we had 3 tribes, as we called it, four tribes, as we called it back then. And because sharing the work and being transparent across the whole team was very important, it only made sense to join 2 tribes and have crits together. But we were quite big, which means that I think those crits were like 12 plus people, people who don't work with each other on a daily basis. And again, we are designers, we should know how to talk to each other and we should be open. But what basically happened was we needed to spend a lot of time on preps because we didn't have context, or you needed to explain the context of the project between us, so it took a lot of time. And also, I think something that you, Hansa, touched on, because people didn't know each other, they kind of started be like very nice to each other, like, oh yeah, everything is great. And we didn't challenge each other that much because we didn't know each other. We didn't feel safe enough. There wasn't this personal relationship. And also, when you're on Zoom with 10 people, there is no time to express what you think. So what we're doing right now, and I hope it's working. Well, if my team is gonna scream that actually it's not, I'm gonna worry about this tomorrow. But right now we have those 2 crits per week, which I think is a nice opportunity because you don't need to be ready for this one day in a week. You always have one slot to pick from. There is only 4 or 5 of us depending on the team. We know each other. We know what we're working on, so the context is not needed. We know what type of feedback people prefer. We know that one person is more quiet, so maybe they prefer to write down. There is another person who prefers to talk, or maybe I know that one person talks more, so I keep an eye and make sure that everyone is speaking. So I think we have this nice, safe, open space right now when we have enough time for everyone to speak. We feel open enough that even if you really don't like something that you see, there is no problem with saying it aloud. So yeah, I think it's all about relationship, creating this very open culture as often as possible. For us, 2 times works. It depends on the team size. And yeah, I think that's it.
More thoughts, Hanzo, MJ? Ideal critique.
I just wanted to add one more point, is that, as I mentioned before, everyone has different skills and everyone probably focuses on different type of feedback, or like you can expect different type of feedback from different people. It's an interesting role of the facilitator, if the manager is the facilitator, or if the manager is in the critique, or any kind of leadership persona who is a higher level. It's always good to not start with that person in the critique. I think that's also a nice way how to structure it, because there can be a bias with the title. So usually when the highest ranked person starts critiquing, then people tend to agree with that person and then not be so open or immediate with their feedback. So This is just one point we are also trying to pay attention to, that or even me when I'm in my team's critiques, I'm trying to not be the first one to start the discussion with my critique. And the other thing is that, and this is more personal to the way I work, but maybe some people will agree with that or find themselves in that as well, is that because I work more on the strategic level, I'm not so much in touch with the day-to-day design. It is even not relevant that much my feedback on their, let's say, interaction design things or UI things. So I tend to avoid this kind of feedback, although I have my opinions from my background as a designer. I'm always thinking there are senior designers in this critique who work a daily basis on this. I'm sure they can provide much more relevant feedback than me. And what I'm trying to, as a manager, bring into our critiques is more always thinking about, okay, what kind of feedback are we missing here? Usually I can bring feedback which has much broader context from where is the company heading, what will be in the future, or what is a different design team working on, because I have overview of all of them. So I can actually connect it with something which a different team is working on. So this is the type of feedback I also try to structure myself in those critiques around it, and trying to avoid my designer's past in there, even though you always want to say your opinions on how the interaction should work.
Wow, great answers. Thank you. I have one more thing. To have a good crit, it has to happen. What do I mean by that? In the times of my Notion file with agenda, people were not putting agenda, so we were canceling the meeting because no one has anything to discuss. What I learned is that the reason that they didn't put it there is not that they don't have anything to discuss, it's just maybe they didn't remember there is an agenda or something. So what we adjusted very quickly was that we just meet, we just go to the meeting, and we say, hey, is there anything? And we are a small team, and there is always something. And what this behavior kind of encouraged is actually to share even the work which is not ready for delivery. It was like, hey, I'm thinking about this, I'm working on this, I can just show it to you and just tell me what you think, maybe you have some ideas. So just go to the meeting, be there, maybe we will cancel or just go away from the meeting in 20 minutes because we have nothing else to discuss, but just to show up there and have the meeting helped us a lot. And we also have 2 meetings per week, which is great cadence. We have Tuesday and Thursday, which is exactly like Mondays. No one is kind of ready for anything because it's after weekend. Friday is everyone is kind of phasing out for the weekend, and some meetings on Wednesday. So it was like, it works perfectly for us, those 2 days.
I was going to have the very last question, and no, this got mixed. Here it is. I think it's still related. How do you evaluate performance of a designer? Are strong opinions of non-designers included? Yes. How do you evaluate performance of a designer? And if strong opinions of non-designers are included in the performance evaluation?
We just had our mid-year performance evaluation. I could go for a long time, but short, yes. No, yes, it's we gather feedback from all around, including non-design stakeholders on the performance evaluation.
So it suggests it's not just about the quality of the work.
You're
evaluating more than just that.
We divide the designer's skill set, and actually everyone at Kiwi, into 4 main competencies, and then for every job family it means slightly something different. But for us, it's about 4 main things. It's the scope of the work the person is doing. It's the leadership skills they are showing in that work. It's the mastery skills, which is more hands-on skills the person is doing, and it's the citizenship skills. It's how they behave in the environment. These are the 4 main pillars, and we have definitions of each of those pillars on different, let's say, levels of designers. But this is what we evaluate. So especially for the citizenship part, for the leadership part, the feedback from even non-design stakeholders is super important.
Malvina?
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be ideal if we can work only across designers on designs and talk about pixels for hours, but this is not the role of product designer. We are part of multidisciplinary teams. We need to know how to talk to engineers. We need to know how to talk to PMs. We need to know how to talk about designs to people who don't know anything about us. So their feedback, from my perspective, sometimes is even more valuable, because for me, communication skills and storytelling is just such a crucial skill for a designer. So sometimes I would even, we also have crafts. We have something similar. We have our career ladder when we have different categories, and obviously we track how good the UI, research, UX skills are, but communication, strategy thinking, prioritizations are at the same level, so they're as important, and you can't be a good designer if you don't do those things. Simple as that.
In Supernova?
Well, we are not as structured as you are. We don't need to be. We are tiny. It's more like less formal. It's more like what I am tracking about how people work, maybe what I see as possible improvements, what are the things that they are actually good at, that they could actually double down on it. And then we just discuss it on one-on-ones. Usually quarterly we have a bigger one-on-one discussing those things, and also looking to the future, where they want to be, how are they happy with what they are doing. It's changing a lot. There may be some funding coming, because we are seed level startup, so there will be lots of changes if we get more funding. So I'm trying to understand what the people actually want to do now, what they like to do, where they are good, of course also where is their value for the company, and try to have this conversation as openly as possible.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Malvina, MJ, Honzo. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for your perspective, for sharing it. And for everybody else, if you'll have any questions, we'll still be around. There's beer, there's food. I think we can stay here for an hour or so. So feel free to connect with each other. Feel free to connect with these beautiful folks. And thank you again for coming. And thanks everybody who joined the stream.
And thank you also to Zdeněk. Thank you to Zdeněk for being a great MC today. Great work.
My pleasure.